Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jira Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya Ashtota Saraswati Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhava ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Mridanga ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Go Premanandi, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glorious to Shri Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane, Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvasesha Sanyavari Pastachade Shatani. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Welcome everybody this morning, and we'll continue where we were yesterday on the first verse of the 10th canto, chapter number 1 of the 10th canto, text number 1. The title of the chapter is The Advent of Lord Krishna. Introduction. So we'll chant the verse. Is still on the board, is it? Number 1. Okay, we'll chant the verse together. Shri Rajovacha Katita Vangsha Vishtaro Bhavata Soma Suryayoho Ragyang Chumaya Vangshanang Charitang Paramadbhutam Shri Rajovacha Katita Vangsha Vishtaro Bhavata Soma Suryayoho Ragyang Chobhaya Vangshanang Charitang Paramadbhutam Shira Jovacha Katito Vangsha Vistaro Bhavata Soma Suryayoho Ragyam Chobhaya Vangshanang Charitang Paramadbhutam Shira Jovasha Katito Vangsha Vistaro Bhavata Soma Suryayoho Ragyang Chobhaya Vangshanang Charitang Paramadbhutam Shira Jovacha Katito Vangsha Vistaro Bhavata Soma Suryayoho Ragyang Chobhaya Vangshanam Charitang Paramadbhutam Shirajovacha Katito Vangsha Vistaro Bhavata Soma Suryayoho Ragyam Chobhaya Vangshanang Charitang Paramadbhutam. Ladies. Shirajovacha Katito Vangsha Vistaro Bhavata Soma Suryayoho Ragyam Chobhaya Vangshanang Charitam Paramadbhutam. Okay, well, Shirajovacha Katito Vangsha Vistaro Bhavata Soma Suryayoho Ragyam Chobhaya Vangshanang Charitang Paramadbhutam. Shirajovacha King Parikshit said, Katitaha has already been described. Vangsha Vistaraha, a broad description of the dynasties. Bhavata, by your lordship. Soma Surya Yoho, of the moon god and the sun god, Ragyam, of the kings, Cha, and Ubhaya, both, Vangshanam, of the members of the dynasties, Charitam, the character, Parama, exalted, Adbhutam, and wonderful. Translation and continuation of the purport by Srila Prabhupada. King Parikshit said, "My dear Lord," he's addressing Shukadeva Goswami here, "you have elaborately described the dynasties of both the moon god and the sun god, with the exalted and wonderful character of their kings." So we will finish this purport here by Srila Prabhupada this morning. And this is where we left off yesterday. The Yadu dynasty belonged to the family descending from Soma, the moon god. Although the planetary systems are so arranged that the sun comes first before the moon, Parikshit Maharaj gave more respect to the dynasty of the moon god, the Soma Vangsha, because in the Yadava dynasty descending from the moon, Krishna had appeared. There are two different Kshatriya families of the royal order, one descending from the king of the moon planet, and the other descending from the king of the sun. Whenever the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, he generally appears in a Kshatriya family, because he comes to establish religious principles and the life of righteousness. According to the Vedic system, the Kshatriya family is the protector of the human race. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as Lord Ramachandra, he appeared in the Surya Vangsha, the family descending from the sun god. And when he appeared as Lord Krishna, he did so in the Yadu dynasty, or the Yadu Vangsha, whose descent was from the moon god. In the 9th canto, 24th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a long list of the kings in the Yadu Vangsha. All the kings in both the Soma Vangsha and Surya Vangsha were great and powerful, and Maharaj Parikshit praised them very highly. Ragyam Chobaya Vangshanam Charitang Paramadbhutam. Nonetheless, he wanted to hear more about the Soma Vangsha, because that was the dynasty in which Krishna had appeared. The supreme abode of the personality of Godhead Krishna is described in Brahma Samhita as the abode of Chintamani. Chintamani prakadasatma sukapavriksha lakshavirteshu surabhirabhipalayantam. The Karasadmasu, the Vrindavan Dham on this earth is a replica of that same abode. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 8:20, in the spiritual sky there is another eternal nature, transcendental to manifested and unmanifested matter. The manifested world can be seen in the form of many stars and planets. Oh, wait a minute, we're plowing on. I thought we had a translation going on here, but there isn't one. Poor old Tio is without any translation. And the book is not manifested. 10th canto, part 1, en français. I don't think we have it here, do we?
They had it yesterday.
Pardon?
They had it yesterday.
Did they? Okay, well, I'm really sorry. I inattentive there to Tio's niece. I think only Tio is needing a French translation, I believe. So you can help him, you can read it. Where are we? Can't say, we're about 3/4 of the way through the purport. As stated, who's going to translate? Somebody? Okay, if you couldn't help him, you will see in the purport there will be a reference in the French Bhagavatam with, in brackets, 8.20. It's a reference to the verse from Bhagavad Gita. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.20, in the spiritual sky there is another eternal nature, transcendental to manifested and unmanifested matter. The manifested world can be seen in the form of many stars and planets, such as the sun and the moon. But beyond this is the unmanifested, which is imperceptible to those who are embodied. And beyond this unmanifested matter is the spiritual kingdom, which is described in Bhagavad Gita as supreme and eternal. That kingdom is never annihilated. Although material nature is subject to repeated creation and annihilation, that spiritual nature remains as it is eternally. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that spiritual nature, the spiritual world, is described as Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan, or Brajadam. The elaborate description of the above-mentioned sloka from the 9th canto, Jato Gatak Pitri Grihad, will be found here in the 10th canto. Hare Krishna. So yesterday we discussed a little bit on this subject of the unmanifested world and the manifested world and the relationship between the two, and a little bit about the vision of those who are pure in consciousness as opposed to those who are conditioned. So today we're trying to hear a little something how, because the 10th canto is aimed at, as we heard yesterday, developing an attraction towards devotional service to Krishna, an attraction towards Krishna. And how the 10th canto is full of transcendental relationships, spiritual relationships. It is certainly part of our process that by hearing about spiritual relationships, particularly those manifested, you could say, within this realm, when Krishna manifests Goloka Vrindavan within this material realm, we usually call it Gokul Vrindavan, and to the extent of our surrender, Krishna will reveal accordingly that spiritual realm. And also pure devotees of the Lord, they appear in this world for teaching us how to relate with the energies of God and how to relate with the living entities within the material world in a way that we can become eligible to enter into the spiritual realm or to awaken our real relationships on the spiritual platform. They teach us that. Of course, they don't dive us straight into the deep end, so to speak. Just like a teacher, school teacher, naturally when the children are very infant, teaches very simply and appears to himself to be only revealing very simple information. So the pure devotees may also focus sometimes on moral principles in the very beginning, rules and regulations, etc. are required to gradually modify, gradually transform our understanding of rasa or relationship. Because in the material world, relationship is generally focused on me and how everything around me relates to me, measured according to how whoever we think I am, is experiencing the relationship. although we don't really know who I am, that I am, so to speak, is the conditioned nature of the jiva, conditioned by the modes of nature. So we heard yesterday a little bit about that also. So today we're going to try to begin touching on, you could say, the whole essential, at least for those within this realm, effective purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam to evoke this transition, or this transformation of our consciousness and our relationships, both within this manifested world, gradually becoming spiritualized, and when they become completely spiritualized, then one is basically speaking understood to be on the spiritual platform. And one is not in the material world, one is considered spiritual. And one, by the grace of Krishna, will be able to visualize, or the Lord will reveal, the spiritual realm to such a purified soul. Now we're going to start, I'm going to go back to a section of this purport. The second part of the purport we kind of briefed a little bit yesterday. The middle of the purport was extensively discussed in the last months, describing the dynasties of the Soma and dynasty, and the dynasty coming from the sun god, Surya Vamsa and the Soma Vamsa. So we're not going to touch on that, but we're going to go back to the beginning almost of the purport, where we were planning to expand on yesterday, but time was limited, as it kind of is. So I'm going to read one line or two of this early part of the purport. Parikshit Maharaj, this is about 8 lines down the type row, if he's 7 lines down, maybe 6 lines. 6 lines down. Parikshit Maharaj, being naturally a devotee of Krishna. Naturally a devotee, because you could say we're all naturally devotees, but that natural being a devotee, so to speak, at the moment, is not always feeling quite so natural. Because we're still covered by material nature. So our nature at the moment is a little materialistic. So it's not always quite the same. Parikshit Maharaj, eternal associate of the Lord. So he's naturally a devotee. And by hearing, as we heard earlier just now, the relationships of such natural devotees, we can awaken our natural devotion. Well, being naturally a devotee of Krishna, what did he want to do? Being naturally a devotee of Krishna, what did he want to do? Pardon? Please Krishna, serve Krishna. And in relationship to the Srimad Bhagavatam, what did he want to do? Who's that sitting at the back? They're well covered. Oh, goodness. You're all covered over. I couldn't recognize you. I can see the teeth now. It's amazing. The teeth, they're so white and they stand out so bright. It's incredible. So what did he naturally want to do? Hear. He naturally wanted to hear more about the Lord, about Lord Krishna. He wanted to hear more. He'd heard a lot. Not so much directly about Krishna himself, the original form of Godhead. He's heard so much about other forms, expansions of the Lord, incarnations of the Lord, empowered incarnations of the Lord. So many pastimes he's heard. 9 cantos, up to the point where Sukadeva Goswami introduces the summum bonum. Ete chanksa kala pungsang, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. This verse in the very first canto, Srimad Bhagavatam's 3rd chapter, is said to be the Shrutifal, not the Shruti, what do they call it? The Paribhasya Sutra. The essential verse which, the whole Bhagavatam is focused around. The conclusion of everything that exists, in fact. all the various forms of Godhead, etc., of everything emanates from Krishna, is the supreme. He is the supreme fountainhead. He's always transcendental. Always. He's never covered by his energies. So this is the essential objective, to help us to realize this and follow the path, let's say, the path leading to that realization. So we'll talk a little bit about the path today, but first we'll go, one more line. Shukadeva Goswami, therefore, to encourage, Parikshit Maharaj, therefore, to encourage Shukadeva Goswami to continue speaking about Krishna and give further details, he thanked Shukadeva Goswami for having described the activities of Krishna in brief. Now he wants to know more. It's natural if you have some interest in something and somebody says, did you hear about it? And they just give a two-liner. Well, tell me more. What actually happened? Who was there? What did they say? Isn't it? Tell me more. Tell me more. I want to hear all the details. It's natural. Even the material world, if we're really interested in a subject, we'll be normally like that. If we're not interested, we won't want to hear anymore. Enough's enough. 2 lines too many. So we'll go back to the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. I think, yes, here we are. Right in the beginning. There's 2 things here. The transformation and the methodology. So let's look first at the simplistic methodology. Sounds simple. If we go to the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto, this attraction, this transformation, awakening of an attraction is described. Does anyone know in a couple of verses in the 2nd chapter where this is hinted? Yes, Doctor. That's like the top of the there's 3 or 4 verses in a row, and that's like the final one. Well, not the final one. After that is a continuation of that. Well, let's read them all. Srila Prabhupada, when he arrived in America, he included this process in his first writing in the Western world. Makine Bhagavat Dharma is a part of that poem which he wrote. And he described this transformation and the effect of Srimad Bhagavatam, how important. And he describes in that poem, I haven't got it with me here at the moment, but how if only they could understand this Srimad Bhagavatam. And he's praying that my words will be suitable for their understanding so that they can understand Srimad Bhagavatam. And he's praying to Krishna, please give them the understanding. Because here in this Srimad Bhagavatam will create this transformation of consciousness. So important. And then he quotes the verses. I'll just go back a little bit here. 1 or 2 before Prabhupada began quoting. Here, text 16, 2nd chapter. I'll just read the English. O twice-born sages. Now this is in the forest of Naimishranya. The sages of Naimishranya are very inquisitive. Very, very inquisitive. Sorry, Diana, typo. Made you run there rather fast, huh? Okay. Chapter 2, 1st canto, text 16. They're very inquisitive, isn't it? They're sat there, they want to know the answer. They're not just sat there, enjoying the birds singing. You go down to Little India, you can sit there all day and night listening to the birds sing right now if you want. Very nice. That wasn't what they were doing. They weren't sitting down there, just chilling out in the forest, I like the forest. They were there to perform sacrifice. What for? They wanted to find the solution. The solution for human beings in this especially age of Kali. And when Sudha Goswami came upon the scene, of course, things really started. Huh? He started to really churn the nectar. And because they're inquisitive. Now, you may have that experience. If you start talking about someone's disinterested, right? They're disinterested. You don't feel like carrying on, do you? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?
I lost the point.
If someone's talking about something, and the person you're talking to or the audience are disinterested, how do you feel?
Just ignore them and find the ones who are interested.
Yeah, you won't be interested. You won't really want to spend your time with those who don't seem to be interested. Same on Sankirtan. Every situation is kind of like that, really. You may have another motive, you want to force it on them, but in general, no. You're looking for someone who's interested, right, in what you have to say. The whole social media is based on trying to create this interest in what you've got to say, rightly or wrongly. But this is natural. It's there too, spiritually. And because the sages of Naimisharanya were very interested, Sutta was very enthusiastic. Very enthusiastic to speak. This is a theme which you'll find, especially in the 10th canto. It's one of the essential features of the 10th canto, is this enthusiasm, this eagerness to hear. It comes up again and again, if we can. We'll read a few times where it comes up. But I'll just carry on with this. O twice-born sages, Sutta's addressing now the sages. By serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, what happens? What happens? By serving those devotees who are freed of all vice? Pardon?
We become free from all vice.
You may also become purified. In fact, the preliminary stages, you could say, all becoming attracted to Krishna are the purification of our heart. But simultaneous with that, an essential feature of that purification is that one becomes attracted, or one gains an affinity, an attraction, a liking for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. It doesn't mean we've realized it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's absolutely spontaneous. But we're developing an affinity for that subject matter. In other words, when Krishna Katha is spoken, we don't fall asleep. We don't think, I've got something else to do. Why don't you talk about something else? Etc. Or we have some affinity. It may be more or less, but that affinity is growing as we serve those pure devotees. Nivritashu pagiyamanat bhavoshiti chotra manobiramat kutama shloka gunana vadat. Those devotees who are pure, Nivritashu means completely pure in heart. And when we hear from them, bhavo oshadi, the ocean of birth and death, or the disease within our heart, this material identification is gradually purified, cleansed. When we hear uttama shlok, glorification of Krishna from the lips of such pure devotees. So that attraction will gradually develop. In order to develop that attraction, the spiritual masters, the pure devotees, may engage us in all kinds of various activities to assist in that becoming eligible or becoming less disturbed, becoming purified, whatever. So that we will slowly develop an attraction for hearing. We will want to hear. Now that may not be on the platform of Parikshit Maharaj, who's a natural devotee, spontaneously attracted. This may be evoked by certain circumstances. It may be evoked, like here, for instance, circumstances are that we have a class, everyone feels obligated to come whether we like it or not. It's part of our environment, you could say. So on. You could look at many reasons. Maybe in the association of a particular devotee who's very inspired, etc., or perhaps there's some aspect of the subject which we're interested in. It may not be absolute, but it's at least somewhat attraction or affinity towards it is growing. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. It's voluntary. How much do you pay the devotees to come to class? 1 hour. What's the rate in France? 1 hour of work? How much do you get for 1 hour of work? 15 euros? 15? 15 euros each, then maybe 40 devotees here, that's about 600 euros. You're not getting paid for coming to class, are you? Why are you here? What are you doing here? No prasadam unless you come. Why are you here? Why? Something must be there, huh?
Because we like you, Maharaj.
Oh, no, you like me. That's not... Boy, you really have to study the Bhagavatam carefully and come to your senses. It's... something is there. Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Miraculous, huh? Out of nowhere, he's created this interest in millions of people. Incredible. We had no interest in it, never even heard of it. And suddenly we're interested in reading something completely foreign. I mean, even the wording, the English wording is weird. What to speak of the terminology, the objectives, the names, the language. Weird, huh? Completely juxtaposed almost to our normal, so-called normal world. Huh? But we're going to the next one. So the affinity for hearing. And then the next verse is a very famous verse. Huh? Shrinvatam. Shrinvatam. Svakata Krishna. Sri Krishna. The personality of Godhead, who is the super soul in everyone's heart. And the benefactor of the truthful devotee. Interesting, we don't have time to go into all this. Cleanses the desire for material attachment or enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages. It's developing an urge. And as we develop that urge, or as that urge develops, then Krishna is in the heart. He cleanses the heart of the urge for material enjoyment. They go on simultaneously. Both the kleshagni and the sukhada described. Huh? The attraction or the happiness for devotional service and the removal of the anarthas or the unwanted or the material attachments. One who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. And then the verse which was quoted or inferred at the beginning by Gopaswami Prabhu, by regular attendance. And other translations say by regularly hearing, but here it says by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, both of them. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. In other words, it won't go backwards. It can't be, it can't be kind of taken back. It's fixed. Although there may be still some trace of material desire or attachment floats by, but it is not something which is going to carry you away. It's just a passing cloud in the sky of devotion. And then Sudha Goswami goes on to explain, as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. Completely happy. Not conditionally happy, sometimes up, sometimes down. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. Thus, the knot in the heart is pierced. I'm reading from the Bhagavatam one by one. You got the book, okay? Is pierced and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive action is terminated when one sees the self as master. Now that could be seen in different ways. Here it's the small s, in another translation it's the big S. It's something which is sometimes a question mark, but it can refer to both, in the sense of understanding, as we see in Bhagavad Gita, how the soul is above the ego, false ego above the intellect, above the mind, etc. The self is, ultimately meant to be in control. But ultimately, of course, the super self or the Supreme Lord is in control. So both could be kind of accepted to some degree at least. So we'll leave that for now. And we're going to now, discuss a little bit about this eagerness. Eagerness. You know what eagerness is? French, eagerness, what is it?
Desire.
In French? Okay, determination, eagerness, similarly related to each other. Eager. You're very eager to hear. It's related to determined, of course it is. Enthusiasm, determination, eagerness can be, sometimes they're used, same, what do you call it? Simultaneous, not simultaneous, something. Anyway, synonymous to each other somewhat. So eagerness, and the eagerness of Parikshit Maharaj being expressed right at the beginning of this 10th canto. Now it's very interesting because if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, you won't see so many references to the eagerness of Parikshit Maharaj. But when you read the Krishna book, Prabhupada brings it up many times. Many times. And it's not directly, it's there. And pure devotees, they can sort of see what's going on. It's not just we read what's going on, but we don't see what's going on. They see what's going on. And Prabhupada kind of see what's happening. He's like there, with Parikshit Maharaj is getting enlivened to hear more. Tell me more, tell me more. Shukadeva Goswami has become enthusiastic to reveal more. And the pure devotees, they're right there. You can feel it. They can actually feel the spirit. We can only hear the words and try to understand what they mean. But they're living it. They're actually living it. You can't live another person's emotions exactly. They may express it and you may understand a little bit, but it's not the same as actually having that emotion. So we'll just read a few of them. And there are more. Let's see. Time flies. We could go on and on. This is such a nectarian topic. At the point of his death, King Parikshit was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami. When King Parikshit expressed his untiring desire to hear about Krishna, Shukadeva Goswami was very much pleased. Shukadeva was the greatest of all Bhagavat reciters, and thus he began to speak about Krishna's pastimes, which destroy all inauspiciousness in the age of Kali. Now we'll notice there's a beautiful verse at the end, Jayati Jana Nivasana. Boy, we used to know it, I've forgotten it. And a really amazing verse, we won't have time for that. Right at the end. Destroying all inauspiciousness by hearing these pastimes. And we see our acharyas like Bhaktivinoda Thakur and others describe how, first of all, we have to get rid of the anarthas. So there are pastimes described at the beginning of the 10th canto, fairly close to the beginning, which describe various demons killed by Krishna. And they're akin to the killing of demons within our heart, the anarthas being removed. So we become more and more eligible to enter into the positive rasa with Krishna. The 5, direct rasas. So first we have to cleanse out those lust and greed and anger, etc. And then one becomes more eligible to actually enter. Otherwise we may hear about it, it may be attractive, but we can't imitate. That's the sahaja mentality. They think they can just get there without cleansing the heart. It doesn't work like that. We will not understand. We will not be able to really appreciate, and we will not be able to please Krishna by imitating that. But the pure devotees of the Lord, like Shukadeva Goswami, and the greatest of all Bhagavat reciters, began to speak about Krishna's pastimes, which, if we hear them properly from a pure devotee of the Lord, can destroy all the inauspiciousness. Shukadeva Goswami thanked the king for his eagerness to hear about Krishna. And he encouraged him by saying, "My dear king, your intelligence is very keen because you are so eager to hear about the pastimes of Krishna." This is the proper use of our intelligence. Eager to hear about Krishna. People are eager to hear about mundane things. He informed Maharaj Parikshit that hearing and chanting the pastimes of Krishna are so auspicious that the processes purify the three varieties of men involved. He who recites the transcendental topics, he who hears such topics, and he who inquires about them or him. These pastimes are just like the Ganges water which flows from the toe of Lord Vishnu. They purify the three worlds, upper, middle, and lower planetary systems. So that's in the introduction to this Krishna book. We'll bounce forward a little bit here. Another occasion. Sukadeva Goswami. Now this is interesting because this is the beginning of the last chapter Prabhupada translated. The stealing of the boys and calves by Brahma. Sukadeva Goswami was very much encouraged when Maharaj Parikshit asked him why the coward boys did not discuss the death of Aghasura until after 1 year had passed. He explained thus, "My dear king, you are making the subject matter of the transcendental pastimes of Krishna fresher by your inquisitiveness." It's submissive inquisitiveness, not challenging one, submissive. This is the process of disciples. Submissive inquiry is one of the primary aspects of a disciple. Rendering of service, submissive inquiry, like that. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna recommends this too, doesn't he? To approach a spiritual master, inquire submissively and render service. Why? Because the self-realized soul has seen the truth. He's not just heard about it, he's seen it. And therefore he can describe it. It's like if we just hear, we won't pick up on a lot of the, let's say, emotional or the unwritten aspects of the interaction or the relationship going on here. It is said that it is the nature of a devotee to constantly apply his mind, energy, words, ears, etc. in hearing and chanting about Krishna. Constantly. This is called Krishna consciousness. And for one who is rapt in hearing and chanting about Krishna, the subject matter never becomes hackneyed at all. This word rapt. It also comes up in the first canto, in the 3rd chapter, last verse. What does this verse, what word rapt mean? Rapt. It doesn't, pardon? Absorbed, yeah. Completely absorbed. It's not like, well, you could relate it a little bit to covering it, like some book is covered by, is wrapped with some paper or something. Not exactly like that. That's a different spelling. But wrapped in this case means completely absorbed. Absolutely. There's no other interference. There's no interference in one's attention. Completely wrapped. Very rare. So there we find in the first canto, well, I'll read exactly what it says. It's at the end of the 3rd chapter. It's a very fascinating verse. O learned Brahmins. Pardon? 44, 3rd chapter, 1st canto. 1st canto, chapter 3, text 44. O learned Brahmins, when Sukadeva Goswami recited the Srimad Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention. And thus, by his mercy, I learned the Srimad Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. And it doesn't just mean he memorized all the verses, by the way. That perhaps even a conditioned soul may be able to do. I remember one man, Mr. Parekh, he used to come every day to our temple in Bury Place in 1971-72. He knew every verse from Bhagavad Gita. He knew thousands of verses from Mahabharata, Ramayana, Bhagavatam, everything. The fellow was still smoking and eating meat. He had no realization at all. He had no interest in devotional service as such. But he knew all the verses. I taught Bhakti Shastri maybe 30 years ago in New Zealand. And we were doing the Bhagavad Gita. There was one man there. He was only attending because his son wanted to go to our Sunday school. So he would come and attend the Bhakti Shastri, was his son, or Bhagavad Gita at that time, and part of the Shastri course. His son was also at the school, so he just sat in. He was a scholar, learned scholar himself of the Vedas. And he knew every verse of the Bhagavad Gita off by heart. And because in those days the exam was totally mechanical, he came top in the exam. Total Mayavadi. Total Mayavadi. But he knew, he just decided to write the right answers, that's all. So he could pass the test. It's not about just learning things, it's about applying them in our lives. Actually, it can be a detriment if we just learn the verses. We get proud and can offend others easily. We have to apply them. Everyone knows this. As a doctor, you give medicine, you're supposed to take the medicine, right? Not much use otherwise. Looking at the bottle, oh yeah, I know this, I know that, but we have to take the medicine. It's for us. Right? This is the link here. Now, Shukadev Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj, they're on the spontaneous platform. They're not practicing. They're revealing this for us. It's not like Parikshit Maharaj is like a dumb student that doesn't know nothing. He's an eternal associate. He's asking these questions, showing it's a natural inclination of those who are on the level of Raganuga, because he's a Ragatmika. But by hearing from a Ragatmika, one who's eternally and naturally attracted to hearing these messages, one can develop this natural attraction. But it doesn't just, there's a process. So even in the practicing stages, there's a process. We'll come to that in a minute. I learned the Bhagavatam. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. I'll try to, awaken this same spirit in you. That's preaching. But there's a process. Prabhupada writes in the purport, he says, after describing how important it is to hear from the right source, he says, simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word nivishta means that Sutta Goswami drank the juice of the Bhagavatam through the ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person. And then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna on every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or another, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person, at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Krishna, the spiritual world, in person in the pages of the Bhagavatam. But we can see there's a process. We have to become pure in mind, pure in our eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and our behavior, our activities. There's a whole process to create that, eligibility to hear with rapt attention. And that's what the Bhagavatam also, 9 cantos are there. And even in the 10th canto, it may not be so directly indicated, you could say, but it is there in the thread of the pastimes. It's there in the purports of our acharyas. It's there in Prabhupada's summary of the Krishna book. It is said that it is the nature of a devotee. We read that bit, didn't we? That is the significance. It never becomes hackneyed or old. Unlike mundane subject matter. As one becomes purified, the attraction is like in the end of the Bhagavad Gita. What does Sanjaya say to Krishna? To Yudhishthira or to Dhritarashtra? What do you think? More and more. He wants to hear it more and more. He becomes ever enlivened to hear this subject over and over and over again. It's ever fresh, it's ever enlivening. Never becomes boring. It's like we went to Chambord yesterday. Is that right? Once is enough, huh? That's it. No interest to go again. You see, I went, I didn't go. They went. They saw, and they came back. That's it. Finished. Sham and a bore.
We've been there many times.
Oh yeah, you have a different flavor. But for most people, I don't know, but it is like, oh, see that. Great. Now let me see another one. So it's the nature. This is called Krishna consciousness. One who is wrapped in hearing and chanting about Krishna, the subject matter never becomes hackneyed or old. That is the significance of transcendental subject matter in contrast to material subject matter. Material subject matter becomes stale. One cannot hear a certain subject for a long time. He wants change. But as far as transcendental subject matter is concerned, it is called Nitya Nava Navayamana. This means that one can go on chanting and hearing about the Lord and never feel tired, but remain fresh and eager to hear more and more. More and more. It is a tip of an iceberg. You know this term? Tip of an iceberg. You can only see a little bit above the water level. It's called the tip. Iceberg. Most of it is under the water. You can't see it. You can only see a little bit above the surface. So we're only seeing a little tiny tip. Manifest, you could say. Vast, unmanifested. Apricot is not seen to us. But if we, by hearing properly or by associating with the prakat, that which is manifested, gradually one becomes eligible to enter deeply into the subject. And again, Kaliya serpent. When the story was being narrated by Shukadeva Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit became eager to hear more about Krishna's childhood pastimes. He inquired from Shukadeva Goswami how Krishna chastised Kaliya, who had been living in the water for many years. Actually, Maharaj Parikshit was becoming more and more enthusiastic to hear the transcendental pastimes of Krishna. You want to hear more? Well, I'm going to finish the Krishna book. There's so many references like that are there. And time is almost expired. So we're just going to make the link. Well, this is a natural attraction. It's a spontaneous attraction to hear. So where did we come into this? Because most of the time we don't have that spontaneous attraction. Most of the time, as soon as we start reading, we fall asleep, practically speaking. The mind wanders. Many times. Even Prabhupada said, even the Srimad Bhagavatam class is a wonderful cure for insomnia. So many devotees, even when Prabhupada's giving class, you see pictures, even sannyasis, their dandas are like head down, dandas are like falling out their hands. Right? Dozens of times. You see pictures, not so much, they won't be printed pictures. They won't be printed, but you will see them if you look through the archives. And, fall asleep during class. As soon as you start reading, it's a good way to you could say to fall asleep in one sense, but it shows we haven't got this Parikshit Maharaj. I can't remember exactly what the purport is, but there's a purport describing Parikshit Maharaj's that maybe they can come. I don't want to lose those cartels. They travel with me. You make sure you give them back at the end of class, okay? I travel with them. Prabhupada says this is an excellent example of how Krishna consciousness can spread. And he's describing how Parikshit Maharaj didn't even think for 7 days about eating or sleeping. He was so wrapped in attention to hearing the words of Shukadeva Goswami. The thought of eating and sleeping didn't come on his mind. He wasn't thinking, oh my God, when's it going to finish so I can break my fast? Take a bit of rest, because there wasn't any time left when he finished. Death was on his doorstep. But I guess if we realized death was on our doorstep, we'd be a little bit more urgent. I think so. What would you do if you realized you had 5 minutes left to live? What would you do? Pardon? 5 minutes. He has 7 days. What would we do if we had realized suddenly you have 5 minutes left to live? What would, different people would do different things. What would you do?
Find a kirtan.
You might not have time to find a kirtan. You're stuck in the jungle somewhere. Pardon? Okay, you're Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. You can do it. If not inside, you'll chant Hare Krishna. You take shelter. Eager, you become eager. We forget. Prabhupada even said that sometimes we should chant like that, our japa. Satsvarup Maharaj writes in Japa Reform Notebook. We should chant like that. This is my last moment. Probably will be one day. We don't know when. It's quite a daunting thought in many ways. Chant as if this is your last breath. We'd probably be a little bit more serious. What do you think? Think so? I think so. So the transformation. So this spontaneous. Now, I might be able to find it. I don't know. I didn't mark it here. There's a chapter in here. What happened to the marker? It's called Spontaneous Devotion. I'm in the wrong book. No wonder I can't find it. That's the Krishna book. Nectar of Devotion. It's chapter 15, I believe. Let's have a look. Aspects. Spontaneous devotional service. Very significant chapter. It's a chapter which helps us to go from the practicing stage, or it doesn't help us to go, it describes the transformation between the practicing stage, Vaidhi sadhana, where we follow rules, regulations, etc., to try to calm, purify, regulate our senses and engage them in Krishna's service, to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti, which is the spontaneous attraction. There's nothing else. The soul's actual existence is wholly and solely to please or serve Krishna. So this chapter describes in brief, it's extended later on, how is this chapter? Yeah. I don't know if I can find it though.
But
Huh?
in the beginning of that chapter, there is a major editorial mistake.
No, there's many mistakes.
But especially there.
This chapter is full. It describes Raganuga Bhakti is called Ragatmika Bhakti. That's not correct. Ragatmika Bhakti is the eternal practice of spontaneous devotion, of the residents of Vrindavan. Raganuga is the cultivation of that mood by those who follow.
Describing Ragatmika Bhakti, but there it's denominated as Raganuga Bhakti.
It should be Raganuga, but it says Ragatmika. It's about 100 times mentioned. And all the way through it. All the way through it. It's an editorial mistake. Simple as that. Because this is based on the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami. And there you see it, almost word for word, everywhere. Prabhupada himself has done the translation there. And it's Raganuga, not Ragatmika. Anyway, aside from that, where is it? Didn't mark it here. But Prabhupada describes somewhere here that these pastimes, a loving relationship, spontaneous relationship of loving devotion to the Lord, which we hear these great devotees. Prabhupada, even there he says, it is not necessary to describe this further, as and until one is completely purified of sex desire, any material desire, one cannot really understand these topics. He describes it very nicely. And then he goes on to describe how that spontaneous attraction of the pure devotees of the Lord, how it refers to the practicing devotees. And if we develop that same spontaneous attraction, and I'll read this is it here, I've got it. It's chapter 16 actually. Persons desiring to follow in the footsteps of such eternal devotees of the Lord are called Raganuga bhaktas. That's correct. Which means that they are trying to attain to the perfection of those devotees. These Raganuga devotees do not follow the regulated principles of devotional service very strictly. But by spontaneous nature they become attracted to some of the eternal devotees. We must always remember, however, that such eagerness to follow in the footsteps of the denizens of Vrindavan is not possible unless one is freed from material contamination. In following the regulated principles of devotional service, there is a stage called anartha nivritti, which means the disappearance of all material contamination. Sometimes someone is found imitating such devotional love, but factually he is not freed from anarthas or unwanted habits. It has been seen that a so-called devotee proclaims himself a follower of Nanda, Yasoda, or the gopis, while at the same time his abominable attraction for mundane sex life is visible. Such a manifestation of divine love is mere imitation and has no value. When one is actually spontaneously attracted to the loving principles of the gopis, there will be found no trace of any mundane contamination in his character. Therefore, in the beginning, everyone should strictly follow the regulated principles of devotional service according to the injunctions of the scripture and the spiritual master. Only after the stage of liberation from material contamination can one actually aspire to follow in the footsteps of the devotees of Vrindavan. And Prabhupada then goes on a little later on. Rupa Goswami says that the learned acharyas recommend that we follow the regulated principles even after the development of spontaneous love for Krishna. According to the regulated principles, there are 9 departmental activities as described above, and one should specifically engage himself in the type of devotional service for which he has a natural aptitude. This is very interesting because that's the spontaneous nature of the pure soul, to be feel the inclination to serve Krishna in a particular mood or rasa. And this eagerness is said when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was discussing with Ramananda Roy, very famous section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Ramananda Roy is proposing all varieties of progressive, you could say, practice of devotion, up to the point of sarvadharma parityagya even, complete surrender. Still Lord Chaitanya said, this is good, but still it's related to the material world, it's still external. Speak more. Then he quoted the famous verse of Lord Brahma, Jnane Priyasam, Udapasya Namanta Eva, and so on. Okay, put all that aside, just associate with and hear from the spiritually purified souls. Hear with attention. That was the beginning of a new sector, like a new dynamic in the conversation. Lord Chaitanya accepted. He said, now from here, go forward. And just a couple of verses later, he describes this verse related to this theme of eagerness to hear or eagerness to service, being eager, and how this applies at all stages of bhakti. Not just the stage of the spontaneous raganuga or ragatmikas, or automatically in the raganugas who are developing that mentality of attraction towards spontaneous service. They're naturally eager to hear about Krishna. They don't want to hear anything else, practically. But even in the practicing stages, when we become eager, this is you could say, the price. In fact, it's described there, Janmakoti, Janmakoti Sukritaya. Even if one performs pious activities for thousands of lifetimes, one still is not eligible. There's only one price of eligibility for Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitaha, pure devotional service. One price only. One price. Ekada, I said. Ekada. Only one. What is that price?
Intense greed.
Tatra lolyam. Api mulya ekada. There is only one price. Mulya, price, ekada, only one. Tatra lolyam. Lalasamaya or lolyam means greed or intense eagerness. That intense eagerness. In the material world it applies and especially on the spiritual platform. When that intense eagerness to hear or serve, hear, chant, remember, even on the practicing stage, this element comes in when we're intensely eager to serve the spiritual master, to preach Krishna consciousness, to attend the program, whatever it is. We may not have, it may not be a natural spontaneous, but we're eager for that. We're eager to attain that goal. Is it? You understand? Eager to attain the objective. That determination. Willing to forego other things. Materially, people are eager to get their degree. They're eager to get some mundane object. But that's always flickering. Bohud. It's always many branch. But for devotee, that eagerness, that one-pointed eagerness to reach that goal of pure devotion. So Prabhupada says, for example, Prabhupada says, one may have a particular interest in hearing, another in chanting, another in serving, and so on. Prabhupada said that all these various limbs of practicing devotional service are there. But when we become eager to engage in one of these, this is you could say the ticket, the transformation between conditional life and transcendence. By the grace of Krishna, when he sees we're eager to perform our service, whatever it may be, with a selfless, more and more selfless heart, determined to perform that service, absorb ourselves in service, Krishna reciprocates. He cleanses the heart, purifies the heart. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaura Premanandi. Hare Krishna. Very late, we have another session at 10, so we've got to move on. Thank you all very much.